Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and a good night. I am Patrick. This is Storytelling Imperfectly, and welcome to the channel. And if you're new to the channel, I am Patrick. I hope you like what you see. Guys, the case I got for you today dates back to the early 1900s. It remains unsolved to this day. And even though these cases remained unsolved, doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it, and more importantly, doesn't mean that these people should be forgotten. So let's sit back, relax, it's story time, and let's see if we can't figure out what happened to Walter Collins Jr. On March 10, 1928, Walter Collins Jr., a 9-year-old boy in Los Angeles, went to his, or Los Angeles, tomato, went to his mother and he said, "Hey mom, can I go to the movies?" Christine Collins, his mother, who was a telephone operator at the time, they used to plug in the cords, if you ever watch an old show of Andy Griffith, Andy's always making calls to Raleigh, and he has to have Betty plug him into the wall there. Different time, no cell phones, right? And even the phones back then were a little wonky. And that's what Christine did. She was a telephone operator. Her husband, Walter Collins Sr., though, was in prison, in Folsom, actually, and he had been put in there because of armed robbery. So he wasn't a very nice guy. However, Christine did the best she could do as a single mother and was raising Walter in Los Angeles. So when Walter came to his mom and he said, "Hey, can I go to the movies?" she said, "Sure." Now, back in 1928, movies cost 1 penny, 1 cent. And so she handed over 1 penny to her son Walter, and off he went. Now, in this time period, people weren't so diligent about keeping an eye on their children because it was a safer time in this country. It doesn't stop the fact that in Los Angeles, just a few months prior, a serial killer, or what would eventually be called a serial killer, by the last name of Hickman, was actually apprehended, and he had been kidnapping children, taking them to undisclosed locations, and doing horrible things to them, mutilating the bodies and such. So there was a tension in the air in Los Angeles, but since he had been arrested, things were starting to calm down, and parents were a little less apprehensive about letting their kids go out unsupervised. And on this particular day, Christine remembered saying that it was a beautiful day. The weather was nice, kids were outside playing and having a good time, and the cinema in which Walter wanted to go was right down the road, not too far away, just a couple of blocks away. And off Walter went. Later that night, Walter did not return, and as Christine stood on her porch looking down the road in some hopes that she would see her son's smiling face coming down the road towards her, her hopes turned into fear, and fear gave way to panic as it got darker and darker. Now, Christine, being a loving mother, then went to Walter's friend's house one by one, seeing if he was there or he had lost track of time. But inevitably, she never could find Walter, and none of Walter's friends had seen him. When Christine went to the police, she ended up speaking with a man named Captain J.J. Jones. Now, the police were actually very concerned about Walter, and they did launch a massive search for this kid. Because even though they had caught William Hickman, who was this psychopath that we just mentioned, he would have totally been a serial killer. If he was today, we would have labeled him a serial killer. But the abductor and murderer of children, William Hickman, since he had been arrested, tensions were high. And so when this boy, Walter Collins Jr., went missing, the police were on high alert, and they started searching for him. They just ran into dead ends. There was no real reports of where Walter could have gotten to. There were no eyewitnesses to his disappearance, and it's almost like he had just vanished. There was one report up near San Francisco of a gas station attendant or a gas station owner saying that he saw a boy that fit Walter's description in the backseat of a truck, and that the driver of the truck, a man with dark skin, a foreign appearance, as so it said, like an Italian or somewhere along, something along those lines. It didn't really play out. It never added up. It never amounted to anything. About 5 months went by as they were, investigating this and trying to find Walter, and it was really kind of dying down when suddenly Christine received a call from the police saying, "Hey, we found Walter, and he's in Illinois." And Christine was really kind of perplexed by this, but she believed her son was alive. This whole time she had not given up hope that they would find Walter. And lo and behold, the police called and said, "Hey, we found him. He's in Illinois." And so she paid $70, which, again, remember what I said earlier, movies cost a penny. $70 is a heck of a lot of money back in 1928, guys. And so she paid this money, and they put this kid on a bus, and they shipped him out to LA, and they even made a big to-do of it. Like, the police made a huge deal out of the reunion between Walter and his mother. However, there's a problem with this. Christine didn't think it was Walter. In fact, she was pretty sure upon meeting this kid that it wasn't Walter. And how the police tried to convince her that this child was her son. I mean, like, a mother doesn't know her son. It's just it's silly to me that they would even try to convince this woman of the fact that this boy was her son Walter. However, that's exactly what they did. They even set up a photo op and everything of this reunion between Christine and the supposed Walter. She was adamant about it. She said, no, this is not my son. However, the police instructed her, well, just take him home for a few days and see if it sets in. And that's really what they told this woman. Take this child home and see if it works out, kind of thing. Like she's adopting a puppy. After 3 weeks of spending time with this child that is now in her home, she is unequivocally sure that it's not her son Walter. And she goes to Captain J.J. Jones, who was head of the police in this investigation, and says, hey, look, I told you guys this isn't my son. It's not my son. At this point in time, Captain J.J. Jones of the Los Angeles Police Department did something that is beyond my understanding or belief. He had Christine committed. He called her a bad mother. He chastised her openly in the newspapers and everything, saying that she was crazy and that she had lost her mind due to the stress of losing her son, and had her committed to a mental institution. Now, she was in this mental institution for quite some time, but however long she was in there, it was far too long, because while she was in this mental institution, the Walter that they brought back to her confessed. He admitted that his real name was Arthur, and that he wasn't Walter at all, and that he had heard about the story of Walter Collins Jr. going missing and thought, well, man, this is a great opportunity. He was actually a runaway from Iowa that just happened to favor her son. And so when he got to LA, his whole thing was, well, now I got a new family and I'm in LA. And apparently this Arthur kid was a huge fan of an actor, a big actor at the time named Tom Mix. Now, even after this fake Walter came forward and said, hey, my real name's Arthur and I'm not Walter Collins Jr., the police still kept poor Christine in the mental institution. In fact, she was there 10 days after this kid confessed that he wasn't her son. But they couldn't hold her because clearly she's not crazy, nor is she a bad mother, and so they released Christine. Now, by this time, when she was released from the mental institution, the police were and throwing around the idea that maybe Walter was the victim of Gordon Norcott. Now, Gordon Norcott would have been labeled today as a serial killer. He, in his killing career, was known to have at least taken 3 children back to his farm. And it was actually called the Wineville Chicken Coop Murders. Gordon's mother would help with the murders of these children. And eventually she actually confessed to it when pressured, when they were arrested, because they were murdering people from 1926 to 1928, the year Walter went missing. And when they finally did catch these people, the Norcotts, the mother of Gordon Norcott confessed, saying, yes, we killed Walter Collins Jr. I helped do it. Now later she rescinded her confession, and when Gordon Norcott was pressured about it, he at first said again that he had done it and that he would tell Mrs. Collins, Christine, the truth if she would come see him, because he was scheduled to be executed. Now, Gordon Norcott's mother, who had also confessed to helping kill Walter, she got life in prison without a chance of parole. But Gordon himself was sentenced to death. And as far as I'm concerned, rightly so, because killing people in chicken coops is not a nice thing to do. When Christine went to go see Gordon in the hospital, because he was locked up in like a infirmary, like he was super crazy, guys, like rub yourself in peanut butter, go outside and howl at the moon butt naked in moonlight, that kind of crazy. And when she went to see him, and he said that he would tell her if she came to see him, upon seeing her, he refused to cooperate. Says, I don't want to see her, get her out of here. I'm innocent, I didn't do anything to her son, and completely switched modes. And Gordon Orcott went to his death saying he was innocent. Nonetheless, this was heartbreaking to Christine, obviously. When you think you're finally going to get closure about what happened to your child, especially one that's just up and vanished, to have somebody give you that hope of at least giving you closure and then to strip it away must have been unbearable. Years and years passed. The only thing that I think is semi-decent about Christine and what happened to her, this whole process of the police calling her a bad mother and locking her in a mental institution, trying to convince her that some kid, some runaway from Ohio was her boy, and all of this. On top of actually losing her real child, is that she was awarded $10,800 settlement from Captain J.J. Jones for having her locked up in a mental institution for no reason. It wasn't called for, it was wrong. Till the day she died, she never saw a red cent of that money. In fact, she even had to go back to court and tried to claim or get restitution. And even though she won these court cases, she was never paid a single dime by Captain J.J. Jones, who seems to be the crappiest police detective / human being in Los Angeles at the time, aside from Gordon Orcott. They seem to be close bedfellows is all I'm saying. None of this is good, guys. Until the day she died in the 1950s at 75 years old, Christine never gave up hope looking for her son. She offered cash rewards for any information. She searched diligently for her entire life. And unfortunately, she passed away without ever knowing what happened to Walter. I don't know if there's an afterlife, but I'd like to think that they were reunited on the other side. It's a very sad story, guys. It breaks my heart. As a dad myself, I can only imagine the pain and suffering that these folks feel when their children go missing. And this case, the case of Walter Collins Jr. particularly, just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, I don't know exactly what happened to Walter. My personal belief is that he was kidnapped, but by whom and when and where and all that good stuff, your guess is as good as mine. However, do you think something else happened to Walter? Do you think he just got lost? Do you think Walter ran away? Do you think that something else could have happened to Walter? I'd love to hear your opinion on it in the comment section below. Please leave me something. Also, guys, I want to take the time to apologize. I haven't been uploading the last 2 weeks. This video is my second week without uploading. And it's because my internet died, my modem died, and I'm working full-time, and lots of craziness is going on in Patrick's life. So trying to find the time to upload and record and edit videos has been extremely difficult in the last 2 weeks. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, which brings me to my next thing. If you did, smash in that like button. Turn it blue for me. It helps me out, lets me know you're enjoying the content. And also, guys, please feel free to share this video if you enjoyed it on Reddit or Twitter or Instagram or any other place that you can think of, because it's most appreciated by yours truly. Last but not least, guys, I'm going to add a donate button to my banner, and any donations to help me continue to make quality content for you guys would be most appreciated by me. Anyway, that's it for Patrick today, guys. I am out of here, and I will see you in the next video.